What's up, Squadron? Aviation has given me a ton of amazing experiences.
Good job there. Nice rock, high wing.
But more importantly, it's introduced me to a whole new family of friends.
Dude, you're killing it. You're having a great day.
So just never give up.
Airport, and then, oh, by the way, I got carb ice while I was flying too, so the engine started running rough. I had to
Join us tonight as we're cleared direct for some hangar flying. I am Bryon Bowman, and this is SuperAero Live.
That's a lot. I mean, a lot of cookies. What's up, Av Geeks? It is Wednesday, which can only mean one thing. It's time for another episode of SuperAero Live. Now, I want to check in with my friends in the chat. Last week, the audio, you tried to tell me, you said that, Ryan, the audio is garbage. Something was wrong. I want to check now in the chat. Let me know if the audio is good. I hope you're thankful to be here tonight, because I am thankful to see all of you, my Sky fam, tonight. Man, just such a crazy week, and I want to say something serious for a second to all of you in the chat. James is here, Aaron Kaufman's here, Zach Sherman's here, Red Baron Modeling, all the regulars here. Looking through here, Ryan Krieger's here, Jeff Jensen. Where's my buddy Scarface? Is Scarface in there? Scarface is here. What's up, Scarface? Ken Dodson is here. A lot of folks coming in as we get started here. Love that you guys get together and chat. Wolf Pilot is here, of course. Anitra, this whole episode is your fault. So great to have you, Anitra. I wanted to say just kind of a serious thing at the top here. As a lot of you realized, audio's good. Thanks, Zach. A lot of you guys realized and reached out. SuperAero, where this basement is not too far from kind of the tragic event. I'm butchering this, from the tragic events in Waukesha this past week, and I was blown away because so many of you reached out, wanted to just check in that I'm good, just because of the proximity, right? Like they're like, I don't know, you're somewhat close to this in Milwaukee. Are you okay? And then two, a lot of you realized that people in the chat, Waukesha Pilot, some other folks, are from the area where that happened, and they were saying, hey, we're a family here. The SuperAero, I call you guys my Sky fam. We're a family here, and I know some of you reached out and asked for places to donate to and things like that, and you made contributions to GoFundMes and to various funds to benefit the victims of that kind of horrible thing. And I have spent a lot of time crying because of all of you. And so it's Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I just wanted to say I'm thankful for all of you. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a pretty cool thing that you're all looking out for each other, and that you're looking out for me, and we're trying to take care of people in some kind of dark times sometimes. So that's a real crappy way to start an episode about fun airplane flying, but I had to say it because I'm so grateful for all of you. So who else is in the chat? Yep, Scarface is like, yeah, I'm here. Krieger's here. Oh, man. Greg Hughes is here tonight. Greg, a former person on the show from Vans Aircraft. Greg, it's so good to see you. Man, it's just so good to see all of you, especially with all of that in mind. And I hope you're all getting pumped up to fill yourself with turkey if you're in the United States tomorrow. I am thankful for another thing, and that's our guest tonight. Check it out, everybody. He waited so patiently. Andy Ovans is here. What's up, Andy? And I'm going to point it out right away. Look at that super awesome tree, and is it a Stearman behind you?
It is. We had a F-18 Blue. We had a Blue Angel up there last year. So for the Stoll event we're celebrating, I put the Stearman up.
I love it. So, Andy, you and I we've just gotten to know each other a little bit over the last week because our friend Anitra connected. She's like, wait, how have you guys not talked? And I was like, this is going to be perfect because you are doing some super cool things in aviation and bringing aviation to other people. And we're going to dig right into that. I think maybe the first thing we always talk about on the show is let's talk a little bit about you first before we do the big reveal of kind of like why you're here. I'd love to learn more just about your history in aviation and how you got started.
Well, first, thanks for your time and asking to be on this tonight. It's always fun to talk airplanes. I got my start. I was 2 months old, born and raised in Wisconsin, born 12 miles south of Oshkosh. 2 months old at my first Oshkosh Air Venture. I haven't missed one since they've had it.
Amazing.
One of those things. Yeah, it's always just, I was born into it. It's just been part of me my whole life. I was 25 years old when I got married. And on my wedding night, my mother-in-law planted this bug in my ear and said, why don't you go back to school and do what you love? And I started A&P school. So Fox Valley Tech in Oshkosh, right on Whitman Field. I was 3/4 of the way through that degree when the flight school airplanes were buzzing, getting in and out. And a classmate, we looked at each other and we said, we want to be a pilot. So we both marched down to the admissions office and signed up for flight school. And then, so I got all my flight ratings and stuff through Fox Valley Tech, and then moved into the FBO world. Did that for a little bit. And then ultimately, a job at EAA popped up and I couldn't say no. It was always a dream of mine. There's always something about that place that it was always stuck. I had a very personal connection with Paul Poberezny. I always looked up to him as a man, as a visionary type person, creative, and worked at EAA for 6 years, doing all kinds of stuff. You have a job title in the aviation nonprofit world. You have a job title, and you end up doing like a million other things, and it's all part of the job. So I was very blessed for several years to work on the airshow team, and then it was about 6 years into my career with EAA when Sun and Fun called and said, hey, we really like what you're doing and we want to expand our program down here and we want you to come on board. So I've been with Sun and Fun the last 3 years and still doing the flight instruction, still doing all the aircraft maintenance and stuff on the side. And my family moved down here 2 years ago and we're loving life down in Central Florida now.
That's amazing. And the other thing that's amazing is as we're sitting here talking, I'm starting to wonder if you and I have met before. We don't realize it.
We've been in the same room probably 9 to a dozen times, but just never really had that connection with everything going on. It's always Oshkosh or it's always Sun and Fun, right? So there's always
right. You got to be super busy.
Yeah, there's always something going on.
I have this weird memory. I think this is not great television, but I can't help it. I have this. So I came up to visit the Kermit Weeks hangar with Hal Bryan and Sarah Nisler, and I was climbing around on like the B-25 and all that stuff. And that might have been just before you headed down to Florida. And I feel like maybe that we could have met that day because I met like 1 million people that day, and I'm wondering if I like awkwardly shook your hand with like a vlogging camera that day.
It's very possible.
All right,
very possible.
I wasn't memorable. I get it. It's fine. Just kidding. So talk to me a little bit. So you're down in Lakeland now. Talk to me a little bit about what you're doing. Like you said, they kind of like invited you down to do the same thing, but like let's get real tactical for a second. Like what's your responsibility now down in Florida with Sun and Fun?
Yeah, so the last 2.5 years at Oshkosh, I was really, they started the mobile marketing unit and they had a semi-trailer that toured the country. And it was very STEM focused, very interactive with the aviation industry. And we did like 15 to 17 events a year. And, Sun and Fun at the time was in this place where everybody knew about the air show, but nobody knew what was going on in the offices 51 weeks out of the year. So when I came on board, it was shortly after that we kind of switched how everything works. So Aerospace Center for Excellence now is the parent company, and Sun and Fun is the a fundraiser that provides funding back to ACE. ACE is the common term for Aerospace Center for Excellence. So we've got all these facets in aviation that now are all a substitute or entity thereof, ACE. So very STEM focused. Now, recently we just launched this summer. We opened our Skylab, which is a 20,000 square foot expansion, all STEM laboratories. We've got 22 Redbird simulators in one of them. So as part of that experience, that mobile marketing experience, I was touring the country with EAA. I toured the country with 2 flight simulators in a semi trailer. So they were like, that's really something that we're after, that component. And Greg Gibson called me up. He was the director of air operations at the time, the airshow director here, and he said, "Hey, partner, let's we want to take our program to the next level, and we like what you're doing." So now it's always been about the kids, but a lot of people just never really knew what we did 51 weeks out of the year on the Aerospace Center for Excellence campus. So now I'm the aircraft maintenance manager. I know that's again, in the nonprofit world, there's aircraft maintenance, right? But the reality is they hired me to be a mentor to these kids. So across the street from my hangar is a Central Florida Aerospace Academy, 366 kids, public high school. If you can get to school, it's an open border school, so you can come from anywhere. We've got students that live in Tampa, 40 some miles away, coming to high school here. There's 5 aviation career paths at CFAA, and it's an aerospace academy. So I'm a mentor to those kids, both as a mechanic, as a flight instructor. I don't have a drone background, but I'm getting more and more into it as we get along. And the reality is, sometimes I'm a big brother, sometimes I'm a teacher. In some cases, I've been more of a father figure. And the coolest part about it is what gets me out of bed is, they inspire me to come up with new and better ways of doing things. I like to be that teacher. You and I both, I know we sat there in grade school. We said, when am I ever going to use this stuff again in my life?
Right.
And I try to be that kind of mentor or teacher that takes what they learned in school, and this is a real world application. So one day we were scratching our heads with the Zenith when we were building a certain component, and the students were like, we tried to use the English wheel. We tried to make this part work, and it was just too tight, too small. And I said, let's get the composites out. So all these kids that have been wanting to do composites suddenly found themselves learning how to do it. And the best part about that was I had somebody contact us through Facebook and say, hey, I need that part. I said, well, we'll just ship you one out. So the next day the kids just made one and sent it to this guy, no charge. It was just, it's that real world application, right? That real world educational experience. And I try to give those kids that best opportunity. I didn't grow up with that mentality or mindset. My dad had every tool in the toolbox, but never really, it was like the tools are dangerous type mentality. And I try to take the opposite approach. And yes, there's a risk in everything, but this is how we're going to do it right. And this is how we're going to use our tools to make the part we need, not the one we have to settle for.
So much to respond to in that, but the thing you last said about like the tools and the dangerous thing, since we're talking about dads for a second, my dad did a great job teaching me with tools, but I learned they were dangerous through all the ways that he injured himself in front of me.
Well, there is that, yes.
Yeah, it's like the amount of times my father set himself on fire in front of me and my younger brothers. He was a firefighter, so like maybe it's okay, but like I don't know, just having some fun nostalgia when you brought that up about like the tools. Like, yeah, we had a basement full of tools, and we had to learn how to use all of them. And oftentimes we were shown how not to do it. Yeah. Anyway, so this is interesting. So like, I think you're hitting on a lot of what's really important, and I'm just gonna show. We're kind of beating around the bush a little bit. Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, so you guys, or you and these students have been building this beautiful airplane, and we're going to show more of it as we chat. But I guess as like a STEM project, or like as a way to get kids involved in aviation, and we were talking about before the show, like really like kids of all ages involved in building and science and STEM. Talk to me a little bit about how the actual project came to be.
Yeah, so the project was built for. We have partnered with an organization called Able Flight, and they give scholarships to people with physical disabilities to get their flight training. And they have several campuses throughout the country. Well, we signed an MOU with them that we're going to start, and we're going to be another campus for them. But we didn't have an airplane. And my second day on the job, our executive director came to my office and said, what do you think about building an airplane? And I said, yes, but we're going to do it my way. And I kind of had this idea in my head when I worked at EAA on how I would do this if I had the chance. And it really bothers me when an organization does something nice for somebody, and it's like they get the marketing photo and off you are. They don't ever come back and see if you still need help. A lot of these these huge named organizations, a lot of them are veteran based. I'm not going to name names, but they, it's kind of a one and done approach. Well, what I wanted to do with this airplane is to put it in a flying club. And then when you're a graduate of our program, say you are disabled, aircraft ownership is probably not something in your profile if it's a car accident, you probably have lost your job and now you're onto a second career in life. So what I wanted to do is have the ability with a flying club as a graduate of our program to now be able to come back and use the airplane when you have that ability to do it. Especially with an adaptive control type airplane, they're just not available in large numbers. So it's an opportunity that we're hoping someday down the road. I'm hoping I have 2 or 3 airplanes in this club, and there's this really cool opportunity for somebody to almost make a destination like people go to Disney. How cool would it be if a graduate of that program comes back and they make a week-long trip and they use Central Florida as their basis, and they go fly all over the state or fly to the Bahamas or whatever. So I wanted to leave those options open for a graduate of that program to really be able to use the airplane as I would want it intended to be used. And my bosses all said, yes, we're going to do this. So that was my one caveat, and they said yes. So I said, let's go with it. And like I said, I had this airplane in my head, so I put down some things on paper and I said, this is what I'd like to do. And they're like, yep, go for it. So we started that process. So there's 2 main things in this aircraft that are different than your standard. It's a Zenith 750 Cruzer, but we adopted the unpanel out of the Super Duty. So it's basically like a gigantic articulating TV mount. And
you sent me a picture of that. Let me skip ahead here. There we go.
Yeah. So what you see there is say you're an amputee or you're paralyzed. So the idea is you can roll up to the airplane with your wheelchair and slide that whole panel and everything out of the way, and not have to worry about hitting the panel or anything. And it just makes getting in and out of the airplane so much easier. And then that second, you can see that left stick is connected to the rudder bar. So now that left stick is got brake and rudder control. The airplane has dual throttles. So you and I can fly it just like normal. It's got rudder pedals on the left side. It just doesn't have the toe brakes like you normally would see. The hand brake on the left stick it's dual brakes. So just like the European light sport models, when you apply one brake lever, both brakes grab. However, on the right side for the flight instructor, I still have full differential brakes and all the full complement of controls in it. One of the most unique parts about this setup is, as a flight instructor, I want you to have your hand on the throttle when we're landing and taking off. Well, how do you do that if I've got I failed to mention the center stick is the standard Zenith stick for pitch and roll. So going back, how do I have your hand on the stick, have your hand on the throttle, and now I'm supposed to use that hand for rudder and brakes and everything? So we put a Ray Allen grip on that left stick, and there's a throttle up and a throttle down switch on it. And right underneath the console, you can't really see it in this photo, but we put a autopilot servo, connected it to a throttle cable, and through a very clever throttle arrangement in the engine compartment, we actually have 3 throttles going down to 1 that goes to the carburetor. But that trigger on the left stick, I can go throttle up, throttle down with an autopilot servo, so it's all digital. So you can have a disabled pilot now with brakes, rudder, and throttle all on that left stick.
Whoa. So this is interesting because when you sent me these photos, I was looking at them going like, oh, like, okay, I get it. You've got your right hand to do the like stick stuff, and you got your left hand to do the. I'm assuming is it just a left and right application of rudder then? Like
forward and back.
Okay, so you're forward and back for rudder, and you've
Yep.
got your normal, and then you've got the brakes, and then I was sitting there going like, but how do you do the throttle? So that's cool. So it's like, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, it's like an electric servo that then adjusts through an autopilot servo.
Yeah, so the
throttle?
autopilot servo is got a wiper arm on it, and that's connected to a throttle cable, and it's just like trim. So if I want trim up, I tap the button and it moves the servo in one direction. If I want trim down, it moves it in the opposite direction. And since the throttle moves, as a wiper, it moves in one direction or the other. It made it pretty easy to do that. Now there's a 30-pound pull on that servo. So I guess in a case of an emergency, I could smack that and override it, because there is a solenoid that locks it open and close. But what I did is, in between the seats, right next to the center stick, I mounted a guarded switch. So as a flight instructor, I can have my right hand on the throttle, and within 3 inches of the stick, I can flip that switch, and now I can take control over that servo, should I need it in the case of taking over the airplane from a student.
That was gonna be my next question. Is like, what's the not? And by the way, like, I'm blown away by this. Everyone in the chat is too. Greg Hughes says that's a super cool control setup. Ryan Krueger, this is amazing. Brendan D says experimental for the win. I think that's probably a huge part of what makes this possible, is that rule set, right?
Yep.
AirTech Coatings says, by the way, hi, Robbie, AirTech Coatings. Hello, good to see you. That they've seen the plane before and it's super cool. And then Brendan says it's fly-by-wire and cable, which I thought was kind of a cool way to talk about it. And Jeff, by the way, making fun of me with it. Whoa, Ryan knows some systems knowledge. Yeah, I mean, I read the book, man. I'm trying. I'm not a mechanic, but it's sometimes up in here works a little bit. So talk to me a little bit then about, like, I have a question, and maybe it's irrelevant, but I'm just curious. So, and this is all near and dear to my heart a little bit, because my parents were both special educators, right, which more of in the developmental disability side of things, but they always talked to me about how, like, everyone is, like, temporarily abled. Like, the idea that, like, eventually in your life you're going to lose some function, you're going to lose part of your your facility or whatever, and we should be thinking about that as we interact with other people who are dealing with these challenges. What I'm wondering about, that said, is I'm curious, is like, so like I'm a pilot now, let's say something happens and I lose the function of my feet. I go to this setup and you said the rudder is forward and back. That, how long does it take someone to adjust to that? Like, I feel like that would have to train that out of me, how to interact with that rudder control on a hand control.
Yeah, so go back to your first flight lesson when your flight instructor introduced you to the rudder pedals. You wanted to steer with the yoke, right? It's
still
kind of like
do sometimes.
Yeah, we all do. I think it takes a little getting used to, but it's like transitioning from any aircraft to something else unique. There's always some sort of learning curve, if you will. It's kind of weird. The center stick, for some people, they don't like it. They prefer that stick between their legs. I don't see an issue with it. To me, it's not really a big deal moving from the left to the right side, even, switching from the stick in your left hand to the right. But it's a transition thing. It's fairly simple. Once you've done it a couple times, the absolute truth in this airplane is it's not a rudder sensitive airplane. So we're not talking massive control changes to get to do what you want to do. And it's light sport. So it's low velocity, low weight, it's fairly simple to operate.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've assumed that's how you're going to say, it's like, you just have to spend some time in it to get used to it. Right. Cause I think I don't know which one's which, but I assume most of it is like coordinating turns where you're just like matching obviously if you're slipping, it'd be different, but like you're just learning to match those actions together. And then it's like, boom, it'll click in your brain and you're good to go. I don't know.
The Zenith is such a unique airplane. Everybody, it's faceted, right? It's a boxy airplane. The cool part about that is, as a flight instructor, when I'm coming in and I'm uncoordinated, the airplane will talk to you. It'll kind of oil can a little bit and wallow a little bit. And the same thing with the belly. If I get a sink rate going, the belly will just start, vibrating a little bit. So it's not. I've flown RVs and stuff, and they're slippery and they're a blast to fly. But this airplane, it's always talking to you. Sean Tucker always talked about how when you become one with the airplane, you'll listen to it, and the airplane has a language. And it's a very, especially with the hand control, it's very easy to get used to. In fact, I've found it's over controlling it is probably the bigger issue. So, we don't really need to move much, especially in the pitch and roll. It just doesn't demand a whole lot of movement to get the airplane to do what you want to do.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. And by the way, I hope you don't mind these questions. I think what I want to be clear about, like, why I'm asking some of this stuff is, to me, right, like, it's interesting to watch how we're taking something that is designed for people who don't have any challenges with their physical abilities, and then we're adapting that design language to something that works for them. And what's fascinating to me is how, even though I'm like asking you technical questions, like, well, how does that work in your brain? Like, you're like, well, just figure it out, dude. You like spend some time. But like, to see this is like remarkably straightforward. Like, that's, and also that Super Duty panel, it had never occurred to me, and this is maybe an example of privilege in terms of not having to think about my life in these terms, right? I had never thought about that as an advantage for accessibility. I just looked at it and went like, that looks super cool because visibility or whatever. Like, there's a lot of reasons why that's cool in general, but it never occurred to me that would be like also a really big advantage for accessibility. So I don't know. I just think it's super cool that you've come up with that design. I'm going to be in Lakeland in a couple weeks a couple weeks, a week. I don't know. It's coming soon. Central
Yeah.
Florida Classic. I want to poke. Hopefully I can poke my head around and take a look at it up close. It's just super. It's super cool.
Yeah. So you hit a nail right on the head. Especially with working with high school kids, they've got a different approach. Like, duh, the answer's right there, and it's like you gotta. And I'm the same way. I'm just as guilty. The answer is right there, but you have to think like you're disabled, which makes it rethink the entire process, because I can't just jump in the airplane. I can't just do this XYZ and go fly to the Bahamas. There's a process involved with just getting to the airport. So now we had to sit down, and building an airplane, there's a lot of thought process that goes into just, hey, we want to do it because I saw this at Oshkosh and I want to do that too. How do we get there? Okay, well, now with all these, this throttle arrangement I was talking about, it took us months, and we made tons and tons of garbage aluminum pieces trying to get there. But as we think through the process, and then we realize, well, if we did this, something else is affected down the chain. So this is 2 years of working together, but absolutely like re-racking your brain to think differently about even, or like I said, arriving at the airport alone. It's just crazy how we think, oh, well, it's easy, but for somebody else, that's an incredibly complicated feat. I want to emphasize, I did not come up with the left stick idea. Zenith actually built a 750 STOL airplane for a gentleman in the Carolinas. He's a quadriplegic. And I said that correctly. He is a quadriplegic, and he has passed the same light sport pilot certificate you and I would have to. So when we have an adaptive control airplane and they can demonstrate that they can fly that airplane, they are a pilot. They are not disabled in the airplane. And that is what motivates me to get out of bed every day working on this project. Is like, this is very important to me. It's very cool to do this and be able to do this for a job. But to change somebody else's life and change someone's outlook on life with this tool that you're creating is just absolutely incredible. The other component is I'm not an AutoCAD type person. I do a lot of drawings and scribbles, and my students at the Central Florida Aerospace Academy get SolidWorks certifications at like 14, 15 years old. These kids take a concept that I'm scribbling out on a poster, on the back of a poster, and the next day a student comes in and says, "Hey man, I drew this up in SolidWorks. What do you think?" And it's like, holy cow! What I scribbled on paper, you just put in digital. And then Rick Garcia is our chairman of the board. He owns Gulf Coast Avionics. They have a panel cutter in their shop, and what we did is one of the students, in fact, that first picture, I believe the gentleman was wearing a red shirt.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so that was Landon Kincart, and he was the one that came up with. So Rick Garcia said, we want to put a G3X in the airplane, and Garmin was on board from the start. So there you see that little profile shot of the articulating TV mount. You see the Garmin set up in there. Well, Garmin is built to go into a panel. It's not meant to go into a 1-inch thick frame. So Landon was the one that, as I'm explaining what I'm thinking in my head, he was writing everything down. He came back the next day with that digital file. We tweaked it a little bit and made it work. And then we went over to Rick's place at Gulf Coast. His guys cut the parts out for us, and the next day we had a part manufactured in-house. The best part about that is we can replicate that thing 1,000 times if someone wants to do it again. And if at the time, 16-year-old student was the one that came up with it. So again, that real world application, right? So SolidWorks, as a 15-year-old, they're like, this is a difficult thing to learn. And when am I ever going to use this? And I said, well, today's the day, and that there's a G3X on the top side of it and an iPad. So we're running ForeFlight on the bottom. But I believe we're the first with the unpanel with a G3X arrangement. So all these things, when we do it, they had to be thought out, and things like where to put wire harnesses, because if you're paralyzed, you might, bump into the wire harness. So we had to put it in a special spot, and it's pretty crazy how many things you'd think about, and then you get to the build stage, and it was like, oh, we didn't think of that. Have to redo the whole thing.
And as the other thing that I keep thinking of, I want to just say I understand the challenges. So for instance, my dad, very sorry, Dad, I don't know if he's watching. You're old now, Dad. My dad had a couple strokes and stuff. He has some mobility issues, and we've been working on therapy and stuff, try to get him up. But one of the things when we moved him back to Wisconsin was well, let's get you in the 172, Pops. We can do that. We can take you for a flight. And the way that seemed like it would just be a no-brainer was we were so far, we still haven't made it work yet. In terms of we have to get a step, but then we also have the wing in the way. We have a head there. It's okay, well, maybe we can lift him. Well, now is there a way for us to do it where it's just me and him, or all these considerations? And then well, now you're talking about cable runs and stuff in the way. It's well, now I have to get his legs in. Well, that's hard with the seat in this certain angle. All of those, it's maybe to engineers it sounds really obvious, but to me it's just it was so mind-blowing. It's all right, I made it through hurdle 1. Okay, hurdle 2. Okay, now we got hurdle 3. Okay, now we got hurdle 4. And the truth of it was, and I think this is where you deserve a lot of credit too, is to do that in a way that because my dad became my test case, it was really demoralizing for him to come out to the airport and be all right, maybe we'll get in today, Dad. And oh no, now we have to fix this. So I don't know. I just think I'm just mostly aggressively agreeing with you and all this stuff, but I want to drive home for folks watching that this stuff is also really important, and it's not just about its applications are maybe broader than people might realize.
The hardest part for me is it's got a standard 1,320 pounds for light sport.
Right.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
I get people, through the build phase, they would come into the hangar and they go, well, what about me? Right. I've got this XYZ. And it's I can't physically build an airplane that accomplishes every goal with this program. So we'll have to build a different airplane, for that purpose. But that was the unfortunate human side of the build was the fact that you knew you're helping somebody, but then there was also somebody that's it's not going to help me at all, but like I said, I hope down the road we'll have several projects and hopefully the ability to impact more people.
And you said something before we started. You were saying every time something is made. What was the quote? It was
yeah. So Mike Patey has that quote that every time something is invented, the world progresses. And that's a powerful thing for me. It's one of the things that motivates us to do cool things with experimental airplanes. And again, experimental aviation is what this is about. There's an attitude, it seems, in some of the pilot groups that, it's experimental, you can do whatever you want. Well, no, there's it's got to be done safely. So, when we've come with this airplane, and you get people from the industry going, that's really cool. Thank you for doing that. You've made you've made an impact in someone's life. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, dude, it's super cool. And then also, in the chat right now, which you will probably have to go read later because you're busy talking to me. But AirTech Coatings mentions that the folks at Patriot Aircraft have a neat removable overhead track to help move a pilot from a wheelchair to the cockpit. So if that's something, there might be some synergy there. If you don't know, you probably already know about that. But if you don't, that's a cool thing. That's cool. Yeah. We're all trying to solve this stuff on the fly right now.
Yeah. So Don and Ron are both huge supporters of our organization. They spend a lot of time with the kids at the Lakeland Aero Club. I was very much on the sidelines watching that their Patriot recruit being built, and the kids have just, I mean, they're flying that thing left and right. You'll see it next week. But Don and I have talked extensively about stuff like this, and there's no commitment on the table, but we are. The gears are definitely turning, and we're looking at stuff like that. And I think Don looks at stuff like that as a potential for their clients as well. Something, their airplane is kind of the best of Cub. Well, it's understanding that the people that can afford these things are probably a little older in life, which, hey, if I make this doorway opening a little bit differently or a little wider, then suddenly a whole lot more people can get in and out of the airplane. And a lot of these concepts that we've been talking about, making it easier for a person in a wheelchair to get in and out of an airplane, for instance, would apply to several of their customers. So we're always, joking with each other back and forth on how I need one of their airplanes, and it's a beautiful product. But we've done a lot of conversations back and forth already, and they've been paying attention to this build since day one too. So they're good people. They're really good people.
Let's talk. We've been talking. We got sucked in a good way into the adaptive control stuff. But I also just want to point out it's a beautiful airplane. Like everyone that worked on it deserves a high five. I think you also sent me some shots. There it is. Now painted up. Woo! Look at that. There you go.
Yeah. So I wanted an airplane that if we did ever have an off airport, it could be seen. But the red, silver, and blue is our corporate colors. It happens to be Zenith's corporate colors as well. I didn't realize that until I saw the logo in the seats after it was all done. But we've got pre-COVID, we do 91 events on property at Aerospace Center for Excellence. 91 events on property throughout the year, and that's really what drives a lot of the economical stuff to make all the youth education stuff happen. One of the big events they do is Top Gun and Florida Jets is the second, but those are two gigantic RC events that happen on the field. So when those are there, I'll usually take a bunch of the high school kids over there, and we'll just see what crazy toys are bouncing around over there. And the kids kind of fell in love with this design. It was on a Warbird type airplane. They really fell in love with the design of that. I reached out to the designer. He ignored us. It wouldn't. The designer of the real airplane paint scheme, he completely ignored us. So we went back to the drawing board, and the kids kind of redrew it and came up with this idea. But their words were that center stripe that goes from the rudder to the spinner basically is the path that you and I take in our flight journey. It's relatively smooth. There's some ups and downs, but the path is pretty easy. And then kind of that jagged edge of that camo, if you will. The jagged edge is somebody that has a disability in life. It's never point A to point B. So they came up with this real convincing. This is why we need to do it, and I love the colors. And John's 360 Coatings up in Clinton, Mississippi. They paint Warbirds for a living. They were the ones that painted the airplane, and they knocked it out of the park. I literally just picked colors out, and they made it happen.
That's awesome. What? So it flew in July? Was the first flight?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So yep, absolutely. So one of the pictures scrolling through is July 5th, I believe. We got our airworthiness certificate, and then we had buttoning the airplane up, getting everything finalized, and then the Friday before we left for Oshkosh, I did the first flight. So that picture right there is the first flight. Took it for a rip around the pattern, and it was back in 2014 we built the 1 Week Wonder in Oshkosh, and I was one of the test pilots on that program. So I've got quite a bit of time in the Cruzer, and on the first flight, I mean, the airplane literally jumped off the ground. It just wanted to go flying, and we had no real squawks, airplane wise. I had a couple, like a sensor issue that we got resolved right away, but the airplane just flies amazing. It's so much fun to fly.
I didn't dig into this too much, but I guess maybe now is the right time to ask the question. Is in terms of like the airframe specifically. I mean, you said you had some experience with the Cruzer before. I'm assuming there's some other, like for instance, like the panel we've been talking about a lot, like that lends itself to the Able flight mission. Are there other things that drew you to the 750 Cruzer for the project?
So there's some great light sport airplanes out there. Able Flight uses it's an Italian airplane called the SuperAero. They've had some success with that. They've used air coupes. They've used RV-12s. Based on some feedback that I had, obviously because I was a part of the 2014 project with the 1 Week Wonder, and then we had a STOL 750 that we built as employees at the same time. So I had quite a bit of time with Zenith. So personally, I had a connection there to the family. It made sense from a design perspective of a high wing airplane with a roll cage. A person could roll up to the airplane, climb into it, and then throw their wheelchair in the back. There are some good options out there for adaptive control airplanes. The limitation comes with like where do you put the wheelchair, or having a system. I love the RV-12, but most of the guys that I've seen that also were interested in the airplane needed almost like a gantry crane to hoist themselves up into the airplane and out. So for Central Florida, there's a reason I put 12-inch end numbers on it, because I would love. It's a dream of mine to see a bunch of these things fly to the Bahamas. To have an airplane where you can load your gear and your chair into it and go somewhere and actually not have to worry about having a support team was important to me. So that's really where it came. And then there's a massive component we haven't talked about yet, and that's asking for product from people. I was going to ask you if there were any people you wanted to talk about with that. So I may have mentioned this off camera before we started. I actually had this airplane drawn up in my head a couple years prior. I knew exactly if I were to build one tomorrow, this is exactly how I'm going to build it, type thing. When we were given this opportunity, we went to talk to Sebastian at Zenith, and there was never really any like, it's going to cost you this, or this is what I need from you. I promised Sebastian this is what we're going to do. And because of my past experience, it was, this is my product that I put out. I didn't hear anything for like a couple of weeks. And then it was Monday, the week of Sun and Fun. And I get this phone call from the loading dock, and they said, "Hey, you've got a huge wooden box sitting out here in the field." And there was a Zenith kid out there. So like Sebastian was on board since day one. The airplane we called the Spirit of Lakeland. And the concept behind that is back in World War II, it was a city of Savannah sponsored a B-17 called the Spirit of Savannah, I think is something like that. But the citizens of the city funded the airplane and the crew to go get trained and head off to war. And the Spirit of Lakeland, we were a B-26 base back in World War II, the Lakeland Airport. And the concept behind that was like, this is a community effort. We're all going to come together and produce this product that's going to do amazing things for other people. Everything that we asked for, everybody jumped at the opportunity to support it. So it's kind of interesting that this thing we had in our head of what we wanted, it's exactly what we wanted to get. And everybody that we pursued and talked to about this airplane was on board from the start. So every product you see in that airplane, there's a very few things that I bought that somebody said, no, we're not going to help. And it was honestly luxury items. So, like a USB charger for the iPad, we bought that. So, it's kind of important when you're running ForeFlight, you need a stable 12-volt source. So,
Sure.
There's a couple items like that we came up and just bought because we knew it was the right product to put in the airplane. But, from the community outreach to helping support the airplane, coming out and actually helping us build the airplane. The community support really in the aviation business has been super strong with us. And I hope at the end of the day, we knock it out of the park and just really make those people proud, because there's a lot of people that are doing good things. They're doing high school builds, or they're building airplanes for charity. Not a lot of them get finished. There's some of them that are projects forever. We pushed it. We got it done in 2 years. I'm very proud of that. My team is proud of that. And I think we're on to that next phase now where we can make these people proud that supported the program into doing what we said we were going to do.
If you, if I asked you what's like 5 years from now, or maybe 10 years from now, like what's your goal for the project, for what you're trying to do there? Like, what would you say to that? Like, what's the next? You're kind of like, first step, obviously done, amazing. Like, what's next?
So I think strategic wise, I think this program is going to need probably 2 to 3 airplanes to be full strength. If you look at once you have student loads, you start to get 100-hour inspections, oil changes, typical maintenance, things like that. You're going to need a second airplane based on student load, and then obviously a third one if it starts to become really successful. And then, beyond that, who knows how big it would go. I am working on some ideas. I would love to do a 1-week wonder at Sun and Fun. So airplane build in a week. Obviously, I can't call it that, but I would love to do a week build and during the Sun and Fun week that would support this program. I've got bigger dreams, if you will. I've got 366 kids in that high school, and the hot button item for me that just, how can I help? How can I, I'm racking my brain trying to figure out this process. A lot of them have ADD medicine in their system. ADD medicine is a disqualifier for a medical. So now I've got these kids, young adults coming to a high school, 5 aviation career paths, and now the biggest one, the one that looks the best, they come here for a dream and they go to get their medical and it's squashed. So I've talked through Able Flight. The head doctor from the FAA was present for our pilot wings pinning ceremony that we do at Oshkosh every year. And I talked to Dr. Northrup about ADD type stuff. I would absolutely love to figure out how to crack the code on the ADD side of the house. I think if we were part of that, that'd be pretty cool. There's as a parent, you can go down to the doctor and say, hey, my kid can't concentrate in school. And within seconds, they'll give you a prescription for a drug that the FAA disqualifies on a medical. But it's like $5,000 to prove you don't have it. So for many of these folks sending kids to our school, they don't have $5,000 to pay a doctor, or the insurance company doesn't cover it because it's not mandatory. Now we've got this problem where you're almost, held to the ransom of paying this $5,000 to go get the test to prove you don't have it, and you might not pass. But I think there's something there, and I'm going to continue to probe into that. And I think that's part of my destiny, if you will, is to keep plugging at that.
That's awesome. I think what and I'm not trying to gush, but I think what is so amazing about talking to you and getting to learn more about what you've been doing is, and I talk about this a lot on the show just from like a high level, right? Is like we as a community really bad about gatekeeping sometimes, right? Like we put up these barriers as a community because this thing is so special to us. So you see it a lot with like, the crusty old guys at the airport who aren't nice and aren't welcoming to the community or whatever. And I think that's all changing. And I think part of that is like we realize that we need to grow this, to keep it around. And what I love about what you're doing, and even that story you just told, is that you're talking about removing every barrier you can think of to get people into the air. I mean, it's always going to be, at least probably in our lifetimes, it's going to be expensive. There are always going to be challenges associated with being a pilot or getting into the air, right? But I think that the more we can do, and that, I don't know, I just think that's why I was so excited to have you on the show, is because you're like talking right now, like tangibly, like let's just keep removing these barriers. And that's, I don't know, thank you for doing that. I don't know if I'm supposed to thank people as the host, but thank you for doing that.
It's just one of those things that, I was very fortunate when I was in my 20s. I was asked to be on the Wisconsin Aviation Hall of Fame board of directors. I received a scholarship back in the day, and because of that mentality, I became friends with all those guys, and they asked me to be on their board. And it was just one of those things where I would sit and talk to my wife, and I'll be like, how do I get my name in that Hall of Fame someday? So that's like, growing up with Paul Peresny, it's like I want to be at that level. I want to be, but I don't want to replicate what they've done. I want to do something different. So that's kind of where, we all have ADD. We all have other, just what level do you want to admit you have it? But and it's another story for another day. I think there's something much further beyond ADD that's all closely related, and that's other mental disorder type things. And I think airplanes can be an incredibly productive tool to helping some of those issues. So the more I study and the more I learn about this stuff, the more I realize that the closer we really are to the reality of all this. So that's what gets me, that's what drives me, is to try to figure out, ultimately my legacy is to help crack that code for somebody else. That's really what it's about.
I like this. I'm feeling good. You're making me feel good, man. I gotta go to the chat for a second before I'm gonna go to the chat, where I know we went a little over on time. I want to go to the chat for a few questions, and then we're gonna play a game, and then we'll call it a night. But so a couple things. First, Jeffrey Jensen says you could call your version the 1 week wonder, but at Sun and Fun or Lakeland, the 7-day spectacular.
That's a great idea. Right now we're a 6-day show.
So,
but who knows if that'll change someday.
Well, anyway, the alliteration is good, Jeff. I like that.
I like it.
Some folks have some questions about, and I don't know if we need to get too into detail, but they're talking a little bit about, do we have to, this might be more of an able flight question or a question for you in terms of things you're thinking about. There, as we've been talking about this in terms of accessibility, things like considerations for the front half of the getting the airplane ready, like pre-flighting, if you're in a wheelchair, fueling if you're in a wheelchair. Are those things that are also things that you guys are taking into account? Some people are talking a little bit about exit concerns in an emergency. Like, I'm assuming that's all part of the broader picture.
Yeah, so the pre-flight is something that I can't get around. And I've talked to Mark Patey at Best Hugs. We every chance I get, we chat about a lower end tug. That's something that they're not developing yet, and I can see their gears turning. Right, I can see they look at that as a way they can help their industry as well. There's options out there, but you're still going to need assistance in some areas. Checking fueling the airplane is going to be one of them. So the exit is a very good point to bring up. That entire, almost all the airplane is plexiglass. So getting out of the airplane in the event of an emergency is not going to be a big deal. That glass will break away real easy, and it's like I tell people when we do the pre-flight briefing, it's don't worry about what the airplane looks like. Punch it out. Let's go. I just want you safe. I just want you. Don't worry about scratching the airplane. But yeah, stuff we've all thought about, but we've tried to minimize as much as we could.
Yeah, and it's. I was gonna make a joke. Is like, when's the last time that I filled the fuel of my own plane? It's like there's like a guy that does that for me most of the time. But anyway, no. The interesting things to think about, right? Like, because I think, and what I think I see in the chat, right, is people saying like, "Whoa, wait, I've never thought of this before." There are all these other touch points. Yeah, like there are all these other touch points that we need to start thinking about to make this happen. I know that just to plug someone else who I find inspiring in this vein, right, is like Jessica Cox, who flies with just her feet. It's like the inverse, right? She's flying with just her feet. She's watching her pre-flight, watching her get to go move stuff. It's a whole different set of challenges. Super inspiring. By the way, Jessica, if you're watching, call me. Come on the show. Talk to us about how awesome you are.
She's building an airplane too right now.
Yeah, she's building an airplane. I saw she posted. She's like, I'm gonna learn how to rivet.
Yeah.
I was like, that's intense, man. Yeah. That's super, super cool. I'm just skimming through to see if there's any other last minute questions that came up. People are really into it. I have a question for you while I scroll through. If folks are feeling inspired to contribute to the cause, is there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, so the flysnf.org is our website. And it's here, I got it pulled up here. If you go to flysnf.org, there's a tab at the top that says support the mission. And then when you scroll down, you can click donate. There's many amazing opportunities at Sun and Fun and the Aerospace Center for Excellence that are helping young adults in the aerospace industry. So while I like to say I'd love you to support this program and this project, there's dozens of other cool things that we do. But if we did inspire you to go in that route, it is the end of the year for 501c3 tax deductions and whatnot. If you do want to make a contribution, just mark on their Able Flight or Zenith, and it'll all go to the same spot. But check out our website. There's so many, just alone with the new Skylab expansion, there's all these STEM laboratories and opportunities for people to, really challenge their minds. It's really cool. And if you're coming out for the December event, you'll be able to see it firsthand.
And I'll make sure to put that link in the description by tomorrow. I'll put it in the description of the video so you guys can click through and do that. Also, reading the chat, getting distracted. That never happens on the show. Greg's talking about a Formula One racer at Reno, Justin, who races and won gold wins gold quite often, and he's paraplegic. He's actually going to be on the show soon, so keep an eye on it. We're going to talk to him about Reno and how he's just totally destroying everybody there. I actually met him briefly, I think, at Lone Star Stole. Yeah, cool, super cool dude. He's going to be on the show as well, so look forward to that. You want to play a game with me before we wrap up for the night?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the game's called Short Final. And since we're on long final, a little bit over time right now, no points. You've already won or lost, depending on how you feel about your answers. We got a minute on the clock. Everyone, check out Mr. Ovans here on Short Final. Let me hit the music. I should get more savvy at hitting the buttons. Oh, that's the wrong music. Here, this is the music. Always a professional show right now. All right. Let's hit Short Final. I've already soaked up 10 of your seconds. Easy ones first. For you personally, track up or north up?
Track up.
What about the favorite airport you've ever landed at?
Washington Island, North Door County in Wisconsin.
It's on my bucket list. What about, let's go a little bit deeper now. You have a proudest moment with this project you've been telling us about?
My son was 7 years old when he started. He's now 10. He taught 48 6-year-olds how to rivet the elevator and horizontal stabilizer. So it was just fun as a 7-year-old watching him teach other students.
Whoa.
That's my proud dad moment.
That's awesome. What about favorite? Oh, go ahead.
To include, a little girl made an error when she pulled the rivet, and she started to get upset. He said, "Oh, don't worry, Dad, grab me the drill," and I helped him drill it out. She pulled another one, and then I couldn't get her away from the rivet gun. It was awesome.
That is super great. I was going to ask you, so you have a favorite passenger that you've ever flown with?
My wife.
Other than your wife. Because every guy in the show's like, I gotta say my wife. And it's usually true. But what about in terms of the Zenith?
So Landon was the first passenger that I took, and then I took my son. He was the second one. But my son, he was 2 years old. He pulled a rivet on the 1 Week Wonder. This is now his fourth Zenith that he's helped build. So
Whoa.
As he's grown up, and the other day we went flying, and he actually, I've got video of it. He flew for 20 minutes. He looked over at me. He's like, "Dad, let's go over this way." I'm like, "Dude, you've been flying the whole time." So, he's putting in the work with the Redbird Sims at work, and it's enjoyable to watch that experience as a father. But yeah, my wife because she never lets her hair get messy. And back at EAA, we flew the RV6 around, so she loved having the cockpit, the canopy slid back, and that was the one airplane she enjoyed. You could physically see it change her attitude, and you couldn't get the smile off her face. And it's just you get that with a lot of people, but that moment for me when I go flying with her, it's pretty special.
That is really special. I didn't mean to make light of having to say your wife. There's a real legitimate. I mean, my wife definitely. I think it's for me. It's a. I don't know if I've ever talked about this in the show. It's you got your my mom who's passed on. That was a really special thing. But my wife, I've got this video of it. She got in the Piper Cub with me, and she's like, "All right, here we go." And I was like, "Oh, that trust, right? That trust. You love me, and you don't know anything about this, and you trust me anyway." I don't know. That was part of the power of it. Yeah. Anyway, dude, everyone in the chats, Greg says, "Kids building airplanes with dad, that's the best thing ever." Awesome. That made me, seeing Greg's comment in there made me think of, you were talking before about the gantry system. That, I want to say, maybe you know about this, maybe you can help me solve this. I feel like there was an RV-8 based out of Madison, Wisconsin for a while, that had the thing, and they would drop, I think it was mostly vets, right? They would have vets come in and go for aerobatic flights in this RV-8 because the canopy and all this is the pantomime.
Middleton, I think, yeah.
I don't know what the crane, whatever. That's me pantomiming the crane, but Anyway,
Yeah.
it's out there. It's out there, and as a community, we're trying to make it better, and that's just a really cool thing.
Yeah. I want to be inclusive. There's too much exclusivity in the world. You know, this world is too small, and we gotta bring. I don't know if you ever had the chance to meet Bob Odegaard. Flew Dougie, the big DC-3. But
I
Bob
haven't personally.
Bob used to tell us when we were all younger. He'd be like, "Man, cool, you know, thanks for sharing this stuff with us." And Bob used to put his arm around your shoulder and be like, "Remember, none of this is any cool unless you share it with your friends." And that's just something that's always resonated with me. You know, the people like Paul and everybody that I've grown up with in this business. It's, you know, you can't take it with you. You got to share it with your friends. So it's just, you know, fun to do that. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think if you're on the fence about it, you're never not going to have a good time sharing it with someone else. Like
Yep.
Literally every time I've ever, even when people have had, maybe when I was a younger pilot and I was a little more gung-ho about the wins with the first-time passengers than I should have been, even then, right, as long as you have the good-natured, like, adventurous spirit and help people find the passion, even if they're just uncomfortable, whatever, they're still going to talk about it. They're still going to talk about it as this cool thing they did. I mean, the person that I'm thinking about, literally, like, we're at parties, like, hey, like, I almost puked in that guy's airplane. It was awesome. And you're like, all right, I'll take it. Like, it's always, you're never not going to have a good time. Double negatives are good. My wife's an English teacher. I should be careful with that stuff. Anyway, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully we'll see each other. It's like 7 days, I heard, like this Central Florida Classic. I'll be there for Central Florida Classic for National Stole, so maybe we'll run into each other. And just really, really appreciate you doing everything you're doing to share aviation with everybody. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks again for the invite. Thank you to Anitra for introducing us.
Yes,
she actually did introduce me to Justin as well. So I've had some amazing conversations with him lately. You know, it's that network is awesome, and special thanks to her. But I'm looking forward to December 3rd and 4th. It's going to be an awesome time in Central Florida, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody down there.
Yeah, me too. Come on, you gotta come say hi. I don't bite unless I'm on the mic, then I can't actually talk. But whatever, that's a whole separate thing. All right, everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your Wednesday before Thanksgiving to tune in and talk airplanes with us. Make sure to tune in next week. I think Justin's next week. I don't have it in front of me. I think Justin's next week. Tune in for more kind of exciting aviation conversations. And again, be sure to go check out the Fly SNF. It was flysnf.org, right?
Yes.
Yeah, give a little bit of love over there if you're feeling the holiday spirit. Would be awesome to help keep these programs running so we can make aviation as inclusive as possible. Cool. Well, everybody else, we're going to sign off, but we'll see you next time. I'm trying to come up with a tagline. I think one of the ones I'm trying, you guys tell me in the chat, is like, maybe I'll say every week I'll say, everybody, we'll see you next week. Don't forget, airplanes are magic. But they're not magic. They're science, so I don't know if that doesn't really work. All right. I'm hitting the button. We'll see you guys next week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.